It is one of Britain's most cherished motoring marques.
Heads turn when they see a Bentley, and if you actually look inside the car, you help go, wow, you know.
A brand known for handcrafting, excellence and luxury.
Putting dreams on driveways.
For nearly a century, Bentley has artfully manufactured extremely distinguished saloons.
It's all handcrafted, everything's handmade.
But now, high-end tastes are rapidly morphing and the company must adapt.
We are in a world now where SUVs are replacing sedans. It's what everyone buys.
Bentley's response is both extreme and galvanizing. The first true ultra-luxe SUV.
This is uncharted territory for them.
No one's ever built a luxury SUV this expensive.
An unexplored terrain dubbed the Bentayga. A plush, high-performance SUV and the most unlikely Bentley ever built. Welcome to Crewe, a hard-working English town that's home to a British icon.
Bentley is Crewe. It's like a prestige company, and working for Bentley has been amazing.
For nearly 100 years, this famed marque has been known for just one thing: opulent hand craftsmanship.
Bentley's very unique. We pride ourselves on our craftsmanship.
You've got to have lots of pride to work here. Whatever you make has got to be perfect.
The level of self-satisfaction that you get from producing the car is unique. When you see one on the road, you think, wow, I built that car.
The pride is only exceeded by the passion for the crown.
Made in Britain, not many people can put that stamp on their product.
It's been British since the old days, the racing days. It's just a British brand.
The core elements that make a Bentley, the time and effort we put into the trim, making sure that the interior leather components are all to the highest standards. The woods, I mean, no two cars are the same, which also, in my opinion, makes it very British.
Today, the company employs over 4,000 artisanal craftspeople.
It's a major employer in the region, not only in Crewe, but in Cheshire as well. It's a massive employer.
If it wasn't for Bentley, then there'd be very little in the area in terms of work. A lot of companies have diminished or moved away.
Men and women who come to work each and every day in the most northerly located car factory of the surviving British brands.
When you consider the history of the UK, the north has always been the part of the country that's always got its hands dirty.
You feel like there's a sense of pride to it, the name and everything else, and then the brand.
Everyone that works here has got an enormous amount of pride in what they do.
In a land rich with history, it's also a factory that's flush with family.
People have worked at Bentley for a long time. Everybody always knows somebody who's worked at Bentley before.
We have 3 generations of workers here. You know, we've got grandfathers, fathers and sons all working in the same area of the business.
I tend to chat to my father-in-law about things, and he knows what I'm talking about because he used to work here himself, the same with my husband. Lots of my uncles have worked here. So yes, it's very much a family affair.
Some family is based on blood, but another is born right on the line.
Working here 40 hours a week, I probably see these guys a lot more than I see my own family. Because when I go home, I just go home to sleep, don't I? Recharge the batteries and come back in the following day.
The bonds are strong, and the pressure to keep a secret is even greater.
All my friends are asking what's coming up next. You have to be careful what you say because obviously there's a lot of top secret information that we get told.
Lately, that classified info concerns the most radical departure in the brand's history.
But we recognise that the customer's changing. Well, customers aren't just the guys who want to be driven around. They are modern families, they are young families as well. So we had to develop a model that was going to appeal to the mass market as well.
To answer a shifting marketplace, the brand starts thinking about a new model.
We had the first ideas around 5 years ago.
what can be an additional possibility for Bentley. Then you suddenly came to an SUV. Of course, the SUV is really popular. Therefore, we know we have competition.
The team takes the machine to a variety of harsh environments to test its mettle.
You see my smile in the face. I think this is always something where we as engineers have a great privilege, because we are the first to design the car, to make the concept of the car, but we are then also the first to drive this car.
In 2015, the Mark introduces the machine at the Frankfurt Auto Show.
Bentayga is the most powerful, the most luxurious, and the most exclusive SUV in the world.
The vehicle is unlike any Bentley ever built because it's not a saloon, but rather an SUV. Historically, sport utility vehicles were utilitarian machines intended to work far more than play.
I'm not sure automakers really knew what to do with the SUV. They were utilitarian at first. Getting 4 doors was a big deal. Suddenly people started buying these as family vehicles. They were seen as being more practical than cars.
What was once practical suddenly turns posh.
I think we have to throw all that out. I think we have to forget that the SUV was once about a rugged thing that went through ruts in a farm field and realize that the SUV is just a replacement for the sedan.
Changing customer tastes hit Bentley particularly hard. The brand's hallmark is building luxury saloons.
Most of this company's history has been about very large, very imposing sedans. At no point do I imagine that someone in Bentley said, the perfect next step for the brand from a marketing perspective is an SUV. This was a business decision where they said, there's this gaping hole at around the $250,000 mark where people are buying other cars, but there are no SUVs in there.
The goal of the Bentayga is to double the company's sales volume while still keeping its rarity intact.
Exclusivity is sort of a double-edged sword. If you don't sell a lot of cars, you're not going to survive. If you sell too many, suddenly you're not the luxury brand you thought you were. And there's some of that in the Bentley SUV.
Purists call the machine unforgivable sacrilege. But the Bentayga sells out before even a single machine is built.
Yeah, there was some raised eyebrows, I'm sure.
It's a total different departure for Bentley as a whole. It's the first SUV that we've ever done.
The radical change requires a massive €840 million investment in the Crewe factory.
Obviously, that's huge investment, and for the workforce, this really is all about security of the future.
If you'd have asked me 2 years ago, could I have imagined the change that I'm seeing here today, I would have said no, absolutely not.
We've got to have British manufacturing. We've got to keep something alive in Britain. We don't want to rely on other countries doing it. We want something prestigious that's here, made in Britain.
An emboldened future that's built with very artisanal hands and an extremely old-world approach. Something that Bentley's been doing for a very, very long time. The Bentley Bentayga roars from 0 to 60 in 4 seconds flat. Happily gallops to a 187-mile-per-hour top speed and features a bespoke interior filled with custom hardwoods, supple leathers, and a plethora of space-age tech.
These aren't your everyday motors that are built in 60 seconds, are they? We take our time, we build a quality vehicle. So that's what you're buying. You're buying quality and craftsmanship.
Artistry that harkens back to a very different automotive era.
There aren't a lot of craftsmen now in the UK to focus on it, and to be able to pass it on is brilliant.
Keeping old world skills alive starts deep within the Bentley woodshop, where it takes the 167 carpenters over 14 hours to handcraft a single interior.
We're really passionate about it. There's a lot to see. There's lots of veneers, lots of wood going on, lots of craftsmanship.
Sourcing the material is the first step. Wood hunters scour the earth looking for exotic old-growth trees that can often be up to 200 years old.
You can see behind us here the pallets of the walnut veneer. The last trip with the experts looked through 172,000 square metres of veneer, and ultimately they only sourced 72,000 square metres.
American walnut is the most popular selection, but if that doesn't catch your fancy, then there are dozens of more uncommon options.
We have lots of other wood. Tamo ash, it comes from China. It's a lovely veneer. It has a lovely 3D effect when it's in the car. There's smoked fiddleback eucalyptus, which again is a very dark wood. People like wood, it's tactile. They can touch it, they can see it. They can choose their veneers. They choose what goes in their cars. So it's very bespoke to the individual.
All of the veneers are extraordinary, but there's one that's even more exclusive.
The really rare stuff. How do you know about my really rare stuff? There's some veneer up here, which is Ambonia, which is the most expensive wood veneer around. It's in very short supply. It's very small leaves of veneer, hundreds of pounds per metre squared.
Selected veneers are gently walked from the storage area to the preparation zone.
We pride ourselves on book matching.
Book matching is an artisanal method where woodworkers mirror both sides of an object, or in the case of the Bentayga, the interior of the cabin.
What we've got here is a full set of Bentayga woodwork. It's done in the liquid amber, so you can see the lovely hue and the lovely grain pattern.
To match the panels, they first need to do a quick flip.
You're managing a little comic book to tell the story, and you could flick through the pages and the picture moves. But with the veneer, what we look to do is flick through those leaves of veneer and make sure it doesn't move.
The veneers are incredibly delicate. A single sheet is just 0.6 of a millimetre.
So the pattern repeats all the way through those 24 leaves. Once you've got that in the correct position, then they'll edge and joint the veneer and mirror match the two panels together. And that gives you that perfect centerline match.
Once the veneers are mirrored, they laser cut the panels for each wood insert. Then carpenters sandwich 5 layers of tulip poplar wood in between the aluminium substrate and the top veneer. Finally, they compress it all together with 1,160 pounds of pressure and then bake it at 115 degrees Celsius. Even though Bentley currently builds 4 different vehicles, there's just one assembly line in the woodshop.
We're a linear process. All of our craftspeople work on all of our model variations. So if you're in the veneer end of the shop, you're working on all the model ranges. If you're in the sanding or the lacquering, you're working on all the different model ranges. So it's not just one model specific.
Given the highly artisanal nature of the work and the dwindling number of people capable of doing it, the brand sets up a unique apprenticeship program.
This is a new area of the woodshop for us. This is what we call our training island. We're now investing in some younger people to replace people like myself who can actually get on, work their way through the business with a skill.
There are 17 steps in the woodshop, and it takes 4 years to master just one. Company veteran Paul Fisher is the master trainer.
John's my brother, also one of my many bosses that I have, and a very challenging person to fulfil his requirements. It can be quite fun. I'm the younger one of the two, obviously the better looking. It's good family connection. That's a key thing here. We don't want to lose the traditional skills that Bentley is famous for, so it's key that we pass those on. It is the best job I've ever had, and they don't pay me to say that. It's a job I always aspired to do, so it was a dream come true.
I'd like to say it was planned. It was never really planned. Some of it is being in the right place at the right time. But when you've got a company like Bentley that's behind you and can actually see some of the potential that you've got at whatever level you're at, then you can't go far wrong. If you've got the passion and the dedication, then you can achieve anything in this company.
A dream job that ensures the brand's continuation.
What we concentrate on in here is very much handcrafted skills, some of which are not necessarily needed to manufacture the cars of today, but because we use a lot of hand tools, it's important that they understand what you're capable of doing with wood so that we can cover every eventuality in the future.
The apprenticeship program is a 4-year course that mixes classroom work with time spent on the floor.
We learn all the way through the process, all hand skills, which is what I love doing. I'm more of a hand skill sort of person.
Even though Bentley's business is building cars, many of the tasks are decidedly real-world oriented.
A great project for apprentices to capture some of the real craftsmanship of wood is to do projects like this. In order to manufacture that, you've got to have a real understanding of how the wood's going to react when you start to cut it and joint it.
Roofing is just the start. The youngsters also construct more ordinary items.
We've got these beautiful, what we call trinket boxes or jewellery boxes, where the veneer has been mirror matched in the centre. We've got the crossbanding, the boxwood inlay, something you would see in a Bentley. This element here, again, is made by a second-year apprentice. It's a chess table. So again, all the pieces of veneer have been cut by hand. It's got a secret drawer, which when opened has got the chess pieces inside.
The key isn't the item that's being crafted, but rather the technique.
It's life skill. It's important in and out of Bentley. You know, if you can't use a handsaw correctly or a chisel, then you're not really going to be a very good woodworker, are you?
People have been here 30, 40 years, and their knowledge is getting passed down. So maybe, and again, in 20, 30, 40 years' time, maybe one of us can pass it on to the new starters then as well.
Some graduating apprentices might be assigned to the second step of the build, in the sanding zone.
So we've come from the veneer press area. Down here now, the parts will be finished sanded.
Once imperfections are removed, the pieces head to the lacquer booth, where it takes 2 hours for the robots to spray 5 clear coats and then 3 more days for the pieces to dry.
When people think about robotics, they think about devaluing the product and actually taking some of the craftsmanship away from it. That's really not the case with us. With the sanding and the polishing, it's very labour intensive. And what we find is you can get a lot of repetitive strain injuries if you carry on using people in that way.
Robots start the polishing process, but artisans finish it by hand.
Everything's been meticulously chosen, matched, lacquered, flatted, and we're now at the assembly part of the process. So this is where we call the jewellery added to the car.
The sparkle is bright, and so too is the opportunity available to workers.
I've been with Bentley now 28 years, and I started off on the shop floor like anybody else. I learned how to sand, how to flat, how to polish. I learned all of those processes. Since then, I've just developed through the business, and very, very recently, I've just taken on the acting role of head of department. One of my lifetime ambitions actually fulfilled. Couldn't be happier. Very much a local boy made good. Lots of my family before me have worked here. You met my brother earlier, he's a master trainer. Different aunts and uncles have worked here in the past. It is a family business in some respects.
A family business that goes back a long way.
You can trace the lineage back all the way back to 1919 when the company was founded.
The tale starts when engineering enthusiast Walter Owen Bentley establishes his own automotive company.
W.O. Bentley is our very famous founder and gave us this very fantastic strapline of make a good car, a fast car, the best in its class.
W.O., as he'd come to be known, despises cars of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. So he sets out to build something better. From the very beginning, his goal is simply to satisfy his own expectations as a driver, an engineer, and as a gentleman. This is the oldest surviving Bentley in the world. Built in 1920, the EXP2 paves the way for the brand's most decorated era of motorsports.
I hope you'll enjoy seeing this film as much as I did.
Just 3 years after its introduction, Bentley becomes the first non-French automaker to compete in the famed 24 Hours of Le Mans. Throughout the decade, a flying bee-adorned machine takes the checkered flag a remarkable 5 times. The early racing success hardens W.O.'s belief that bigger is always better.
Bentley was more of a hammer rather than a scalpel. It was, let's take the biggest engine we can throw in there and on the biggest body and make it work.
Racing provides the acclaim, but by the 30s, luxury tourers are all the rage. The 8-litre is W.O.'s finest Grand Tourer and the last motorcar he ever designs for the company. Unfortunately, the machine launches straight into the Great Depression, and only 100 are ever made. By the late 50s, the marque cements its status as an impeccable luxury saloon builder when it introduces a 4-door Continental flying spur, thanks to a specialty coach builder named H.J. Mulliner. Today, the car is remembered fondly, but the name is actually more important.
The Mulliner name can actually be traced right back to the 1500s with a family business that was involved in saddlery, and it became a carriage company in the 1700s, and eventually it got into building bodies for motor cars in the 1920s.
In 1959, Bentley buys the Mulliner company and turns it into an in-house bespoke division.
It's a very personal, it's almost the same as monogramming a shirt, but to the power of 10, you know?
If you add up all of the standard Bentayga options, there are over 1 million different combinations. Yet for some, that's not nearly exclusive enough.
There are always people who want something just a little bit more.
One of the most popular upgrades is a £23,000 picnic set.
Let's start with a real leisure accessory, which is the Bentayga hamper. We have a champagne cooler and 4 glasses, they're crystal. We then have bone china and silver-plated cutlery for that very special picnic. And then in the third section, we have a lovely Mulliner cashmere rug in its own hold.
They also offer one of the most expensive clocks for a car.
We developed, in conjunction with Breitling, a tourbillon that's made out of gold with a mother-of-pearl face, 8 diamond digits.
The tourbillon winds the clock using the vehicle's acceleration. And amazingly, it's nearly as expensive as the machine itself, costing a cool £150,000. Some customization offers a bit more of a vista.
We love doing things in marquetry. You can basically create any image you want to.
If a wood veneer isn't quite up to snuff, perhaps stone would be more to your liking.
So at the beginning of last year, we introduced a very rare stone veneer.
While the team is capable of creating almost anything the heart desires, there are indeed some requests that go too far.
We do get some requests that are interesting. My very favorite is we were asked once for a prescription windscreen, which was something that obviously we couldn't do.
Today, you don't need an optician to see that times have never been better for the Bentley marque. The Bentayga is the first of its kind. An ultra high-end SUV that lives in exceptionally rarefied air. The machine starts at a staggering £160,000 before options, but it rarely stays there.
It might seem risky, but with SUV sales where they are, it's not really that great of a risk. The Bentayga is probably going to sell well because the appetite for SUVs is insatiable.
What might be risky for some is regular business for others. The brand is the leading ultra-premium car manufacturer. 1 out of every 4 machines sold above £130,000 is a Bentley.
It's important to show that Britain's still got a premium manufacturing product. The fact that Bentley is still here, still British, is a great advert for us.
It's important to keep manufacturing alive, especially in Britain. We don't want everybody to go to university and sit in office jobs, but yeah, manufacturing is really important. People need to focus on it. We need manufacturers.
Bentley is this big name, handmade materials, stitching leather, putting it all together by hand, built in England. And working here, you see how true it is, and it's awesome.
There's extreme nationalistic pride when you see one of these cars go by, no matter where you are in the world. Fortunately, they're still very rare, so even though our volumes are much higher than they have ever been, it's still a very exclusive offering.
The machines are famous for their exclusivity, yet the impact of the factory on Crewe and the United Kingdom is far more widespread.
It's the biggest employer in the area by a long way, and the whole local economy really does thrive on Bentley being here.
The fact that it's made here at Crewe, it's always been made here. I'm 48 and it's always been in the town as long as I can remember. I've got relatives that used to work here many years ago. I work here myself. The town's very proud of Bentley.
This plant offers thousands of jobs, so it's something I wouldn't be able to find somewhere like this to work local other than Bentley. It creates so many jobs.
I believe 80–90% of our product is exported. So yeah, it's massive. It's known throughout the world. You can go anywhere in the world and people will know the brand Bentley. It's iconic.
This area would be devastated without this factory. You know, there's not a great lot else really around here. So it's very important. It's good for jobs in the whole area, really. You know, for miles around, 30–40 mile radius.
The Crewe factory is highly integrated. Design, engineering, paint, leather, wood, engine building, and final assembly all happen on the same site.
You come to do a good day's work, an honest day's work. And that's what people do here.
The facility is roughly the same size as the Vatican, at just over 400,000 square meters.
We make cars in a completely different way. We're our own first-tier supplier, so many of the components that are made here then go into our cars.
One of those first-tier suppliers is the one-of-a-kind leather shop.
It's a semi-alloy leather, so you can see it's got some marking up where we've already looked for the natural characteristics. Then you take here, then we've got a full-grain leather again, so this is beluga. This one here, you can slightly see better in the light, but this is what they call a burnt oak.
There are 24 different standard leathers, and each Bentayga requires 15 hides to complete a cabin.
We lay it out on the hide inspection table here, and then we start marking out what we would call as the natural characteristics of the bull hide itself.
David Legg is a master hide inspector and the man who ensures perfection.
Been here 13 years, look after you. Just enjoy doing what we're doing. Basically looking for any imperfections on the hide, bites, scars, moles, any surface wounds, basically, and then we just mark up the flaws.
The process might be old world British, but the hides actually come from Sweden, because that country outlawed barbed wire fences, which minimizes the risk of blemishes.
Like I've got a scar here that'll be a V4. We can use the hide in the car, so we can utilise, get more parts in, but it may not be seen. This C4 here, obviously it's a really bad crease. We don't want that in the car.
Each hide is paired with a build manifest sheet.
That would say what colour thread we'd be using, what colour hide we'd be using. So that's basically a work instruction sheet.
Marked hides head to a robotic cutter, where a camera takes a picture and a computer identifies the best layout.
So literally that image will allow us then to nest probably around about 380 panels that go into a Bentayga. We've got the 2 cutting heads. It's a reciprocating blade to ensure the accuracy of the panels.
It takes 65 minutes to cut a panel.
We've inspected the leather, we've cut the leather, we've now split them into a car set, and these panels there will go towards the seat assembly line once they've been sewn.
The sewing starts with a very special diamond quilting machine.
This is new technology. We've taken some of the cut panels now, and we use this automated sewing machine. That ensures the consistency and the accuracy of the panel.
The machine uses a lot of thread. Each cabin requires 135 meters.
This is where we embroider the Bentley wings, for example, onto the front face of a headrest that goes into the car. There's around 4,760 stitches that go into the wings.
It takes just 7 minutes to embroider a headrest.
This is the sewing area within the trim shop. You can see there's lots of sewing machinists who are very skilled in what they do.
Threading the needle at the moment. I think it's the craftsmanship, and when you're actually out and about and see your work and you know that you've had a hand in it, and it's very rewarding. I sew the inserts. It's very intricate, and obviously we have to keep very straight lines because we're going up the secondary here.
After the various panels are sub-assembled, it's time to stitch them all together to form a complete seat cover.
A car comes along and all our bits are in this box, and then we have a process of how to sew the seats, and we just get pieces out at a time as and when we want them. You just have to make sure you get all your seats on. I think if you get stressed about it, you get workshop, then you can make mistakes. You just have to keep calm.
To keep the artisanal sewing tradition alive, they hand the knowledge down to the next generation.
It will take years to actually get up to a very high level. We take on apprentices each year in the trim shop.
I found out about the apprenticeship, and then that's all I've worked towards through school to get to here.
We can take somebody that's never actually sewn 2 pieces of leather before, we can turn them into something special.
I do like cross-stitch, I've got to say. I really am enjoying it.
Cross-stitching is one of the most labour-intensive upgrades.
So mooring is taking a needle and thread and going in between each stitch line, each sew line on the seat cover itself.
It takes one artisan over 56 hours to cross-stitch a single set of interior panels.
So you've got one continual thread, so no knots, no breaks or anything. You use just the twin stitching, so you don't actually go through the leather. So you go on a diagonal, and just go through each stitch.
Finally, all of the one-of-a-kind craftsmanship comes together on the seat assembly line.
There's around about 8 stations on here. Within an hour, one seat would come off the end of the line.
Eight stations within an hour is speedy by Bentley standards. Yet there's very little stress and the passion is palpable.
Pride, a great pride. We do have a lot of famous, wealthy people coming through the factory, so it is nice to see these people and also seeing the products on the TV and in the streets as well.
This is my sort of 30th year now. Wouldn't do anything different, don't know anything different, love what I do.
Yeah, this is my first time doing it.
Ah, right. And so why is this important?
My uncle used to work here. He was here for over 30 years, and then I worked my way up.
The seats look finished, but there's one more step.
There's a number of things that we're looking for. We're looking at the scars on the leather, because we purchased the best leather to go onto the seats. We're also checking the stitching, any visible gaps, and also we're checking for the colour of the stitching as well.
The quality control team uses a sophisticated computer system to log any imperfections.
This is a flags terminal. Any faults that we find, we can highlight on the screen, and then if we're unable to rectify any of the faults, then we can leave the defects open and then they can get rectified.
While the sewing team labours over each stitch, on the other side of the Crewe site, Rob Thompson leads an even more colourful team inside the paint shop.
I started as a technical apprentice. At the time, it was the industrial area, so there were quite a few factories, but the Bentley apprenticeship was considered the premium one.
It takes around about a day and a half for a body to be fully primed and painted.
The finish on a Bentley is a little bit above and beyond. Our customers expect nothing less than the best.
Chemically pre-treated bodies enter the base coat booth, where robotic heads spin up to 55,000 revolutions per minute. Sometimes they spray one of the 17 standard colours. But they're also capable of nearly 28 trillion bespoke hues.
If it's technically feasible, we can match anything. So we've had Hawaiian shirts, lipsticks to match. We've had some different options.
Once the base layer is applied, it's time for some clear coat. As the bodies pick up their colour, so do the plastics. First with a base coat, and then with their own clear coat.
I mean, a lot of the guys in here can see a car on the TV and say, I've worked on that car. There is an element of pride with it. It's always about the pride.
Finally, it's time to send a painted body to the assembly hall, where it will take another 150 hours to build a Bentayga. It's taken 14 hours to craft the Bentayga's wood interior, 130 hours to stitch the leatherwork, and a day and a half to paint the body. Now, it's time to begin the assembly of a brand new machine.
Currently, we're in a new facility which is purpose-built for Bentayga assembly, and this is what we call PBS, Painted Body Stores. Essentially, it's chassis 1A.
When the body hits the line, the first step is to take the doors and the front fenders off.
This is unique to Bentley. I mean, I've worked in the automotive industry for the best part of 25 years, and I've never known another manufacturer do that, removing the fenders from the vehicles.
Most cars feature body sides that include the front fenders because it saves money. But at Bentley, price doesn't matter, and the goal is to remove unwanted panel seams. Next, it's time to catch a little bit of daylight, thanks to a very unique sunroof seal heater.
We have to achieve an ambient temperature of 22 degrees to apply the sunroof seal, and that allows the adhesive to bond securely to make sure that the vehicle is watertight in effect.
Sunroof seals aren't the only tightly bonded parts of the build.
So we get together out of shift, a payday usually, isn't it? When you've got the money to. But yeah, a lot of these guys do chat outside of work. Obviously, technology nowadays, you've got groups. So yeah, definitely friendly banter up and down. Good team spirit.
The big step is installing the dashboard, which features the first of the machine's 90 computer control units.
vehicle is just transferred to a transport dolly and allows us to move the vehicle from this facility into the main build hall.
The main building is, in fact, the old building, and it dates back to 1938.
The history of the factory goes back to just before the war. The factory was built to make Merlin 12-cylinder engines.
During World War II, over 26,000 Merlin 12-cylinder aeroplane engines are built. And today, the tradition continues inside the largest 12-cylinder car engine shop in the world.
So we're in the engine assembly now. This is where we produce the block and the engine.
The Bentley W12 is not only hand-built, but also highly unique.
We've got, like, in essence, two V6s strapped together to make you a W12 engine.
So you've kind of got these crazy two engines together, and the result is that you've got a lot of very smooth power.
What the W12 does is package 12 cylinders, all that power, all that smoothness, in the tiniest, incomprehensible small amount of space. It's shocking.
The W12 is surprisingly small, with dimensions that rival a traditional V8. This not only allows it to fit inside the Bentayga, but also makes it the only 12-cylinder SUV.
We are the largest producer and the only producer now, really, of W12 cylinder engines. Last year we did around about 9,000 engines.
Like the engine, the line itself is very compact. There are just 24 stations, and each one is manned by a passionate craftsperson.
Some are sons, their fathers worked here, their granddad worked here, which is really nice, a real nice family environment and a real nice spirit within the factory.
It will take just over 7.5 hours to build and test a new W12.
The engine's now just come into the station, so we have the main block, the crankcase on the engine, and you can see there all the kitted parts for the associated engine.
At the first station, they install the massive crankshaft.
Each one's unique, so when you saw him scan that to crankshaft itself, it's got its unique identification number, and then that helps them select the bearings. This way we fit all the 12 pistons within the engine, and we fit the conrods, and then these get assembled now, and the skilled colleague now will fit them.
They install the crankcase cover, cylinder heads, camshafts, timing chain, and the massive flywheel goes on. Finally, the all-important turbochargers. The finished engine weighs just 270 kilograms. That's 31 kilos lighter than the last generation. Finished engines head to the powertrain sub-assembly line.
This way we fit the gearbox. And then after that, we put the gearbox and engine onto the front subframe, and then we have the core units, and then it goes off the end of the line.
The massive drivetrain is then sent directly to the assembly hall, where it's installed into an eagerly awaiting Bentayga.
We're currently at engine marriage, and this is the first step of what we call chassis 2. The engine and the powertrain will be installed into the vehicle at this point.
The powerful W12 engine and massive running gear help the Bentayga achieve a very respectable 3,500 kilo towing capacity.
The engine goes in, front end module, and further down it gets, the bumpers, the wheels, everything goes on, and then it leaves our line and goes on to final one.
Next, they install the radiator, front and rear lights, bolt the front fenders on, add the bumpers, the famous matrix grille, and finally, the wheels. A hoist then lifts the partially built machine to the final line, where they complete the center console. Two craftspeople work in tandem to install the windshield. Then all the seats go in.
We start to add the doors back onto the car. Then we do all the final fit and finish to make sure that the panel gaps flush is exactly as we would expect.
Part of the quality control process is testing all 90 of the machine's computer control units.
We do the testing, diagnostics. It's hand-built, it costs a lot of money, so we need to make sure that quality is the focus and that the car is the best it can be. My dad's worked here for over 40 years, so I've always been interested in Bentley. There are a lot of family members here. It's brilliant to keep it in the family, I think, and to pass it down also. I mean, when I'm older and I have children, to be, well, I worked at Bentley and so did your granddad. So yeah, it's nice. It's the heritage, isn't it, that you're passing on?
I love it. I get up every single day and I can't wait to get to work. And it's when you see the vehicle rolling off the line, you see the teamwork that is involved in producing the car. Everyone plays a part, and I just love the family elements of the vehicle.
A family vehicle that's built by a clan of artisans and just happens to feature exquisite materials, bespoke touches, and a monstrous 6-litre, 600 horsepower W12 engine.
The Bentayga is ridiculously quick. It has a sub 4 second 0 to 60 time if you really hammer it. But, you know, driven normally in traffic, it's just whisper quiet. It sort of just wafts along.
The Bentayga does one thing well, and it's the absence of stimulus. You don't realize how good it is until you get out of it and into something else and realize, wow, this road was actually bumpy.
Yeah, the Bentayga's a pretty special thing to drive, and it has multiple personalities in a good way. There's the saying, jack of all trades, master of none, but it's really good at a lot of things.
It's a Bentley, clearly you're not going to take this thing off-road, but it actually is a surprisingly capable off-road vehicle.
It's a proficient off-roader, thanks, in part, to a unique 48-volt electrical unit that powers the machine's dynamic ride system.
Bentley's given them active anti-roll bars, and that's part of why it has a 48-volt system, is to power these anti-roll bars, which are stopping nearly 6,000-pound SUV from listing from side to side in an instant. Off-road, they sort of relax the anti-roll bars and allow the suspension to articulate so that you can drive this thing basically anywhere.
An anti-roll bar is a device that stops the car from leaning as you're going into a corner. I turn this way, the car wants to lean out towards the outside of the corner. A very stiff roll bar stops that from happening. The drawback is ride quality. Modern cars use a lot of electricity to run the computers and the stereos and all the convenience features that we love. That means they have very heavy wiring harnesses. And you can reduce that by increasing the voltage that the system works at. All modern cars' electrical systems are 12 volts. The Bentayga has a subsystem that's 48 volts. 4 times the voltage means 1/4 the size of the wire. So they can reduce the wire down to 1/4 of its size and save weight.
The Bentayga's electrical system isn't the only thing that's 4 times the norm. The machine's price is also nearly quadruple what a typical SUV goes for.
I think from Bentley's point of view, there are people who are spending $200,000 on a Mercedes Geländewagen, a G-Class, that has nothing. And they're saying, where's our piece of the pie, right? There's a segment of the marketplace who will buy the most expensive car because it's the most expensive car, not because it's sporty, not because of any other attributes, just because it's expensive. The people who buy these cars tend to be outspenders. They're looking at the people around them and say, this one has a Mercedes, they have a BMW. Bentley's the trump card in that segment, right?
While the machine is capable of going nearly anywhere, the majority will probably never leave the street.
The people who buy these cars, the fact that it says Bentley on it is far more important than anything else about it, including the way it looks.
Yeah, the Bentayga isn't the greatest looking thing. It's not the greatest looking SUV. Bentley sort of put on a lot of Bentley design cues, from the shoulder line to the rear fender flares to the massive Bentley grille, but I wouldn't say that all the Bentley cues exactly work on an SUV.
When you look at the Bentayga, it's almost apparent that it's a perfect sniper target at reality show families. These are people who look at me, bling, bling, bling.
Even if the looks might be vexing to some, it's nearly impossible not to be impressed with the bespoke interior.
First of all, it's the smell. I mean, they smell amazing. All the materials that are in it, it's a special experience.
Bentley does wood better than anyone else. They take pride in the craftsmanship.
You're not just buying materials, you're also buying a lot of time and skill. You're paying for these old world craftsmen to hand plane and sand and varnish your wood trim. So there's exclusivity of that and a luxury in that.
The instrument panel is one of the most beautiful instrument panels there is. All the stitching, and then there are huge numbers of options that you can have for these things too, since they're all handmade.
A plethora of options that lead to an incredible amount of exclusivity.
No two are exactly alike. You're not getting the same as the next guy behind you. Even if you don't go crazy with the customization options, you still know that your pieces of your interior were handmade and each one is going to be unique.
Uniqueness paired with a 4-second 0 to 60 time and a 187 mile/hour top speed.
It's ridiculously quick, it's ridiculously fast, it's ridiculously powerful, it's luxurious, it's the most expensive, and it's basically in a segment of one.
The Bentley Bentayga, a 160,000-pound ultra-luxe SUV, and the greatest departure in the brand's nearly 100-year history.